How you doing? This is Dr. Sa at Specific Chiropractic. In this Gonstead Xray Analysis case, we're going to go over several things. Number one, when to do a Gonstead compound ilium adjustment, and when we may want to consider it doing it separately. Two, when to do a heel lift and not to do a heel lift. And three, biomechanical considerations for a sacral base angle that's close to neutral position. Now in this case study over here, patient was complaining predominantly of the left neck pain relating to these two fingers over here. Now we're able to identify and isolate that the fifth cervical nerve root and the fifth cervical vertebrae is the fella that gives her trouble and gives her relief. However, she states, Doc, I get a relief for maybe a few hours or maybe holds by end of the day at most. So when I hear a thing like that, we need to consider what's going on below it. So the very first thing I look at in films is, where's the anteriority of the atlas? Number two, what's the sacral base angle? The sacral base angle for this fellow has went backwards by 5 degrees. So things that cause that is a possible posterior sacrum, base posterior sacrum, sacral segment issue, AS-IN or AS-IN ilium. Things that makes the sacrum go tilt forward, possibly there's a PI, EX, PX ilium. Or in extreme case, a very severe inferiority at the fifth lumbar vertebrae. Now, because this fellow went backwards, I'm expecting a potential either a sacrum issue, AS-IN or AS-IN ilium. So, taking a careful look over here, next thing I look at is, where's the femoroacetabular line? It has sunken down on the right hand side. Things that make it sink down on the right hand side is either going to be a PI, EX, PX ilium. Things that make it raise higher is going to be an AS-IN or AS-IN ilium. Next component is, where's the gluteal fold shadow line? It is when deviated to the left of the pubic symphysis instead of being in the center. So we have a potential EX misalignment, and I want to confirm that. Narrow, narrow, wider at the obturator foramen. So it confirms we have an EX misalignment. Wider, wider, and narrow, we have an IN. Next, taller vertically and taller over here indicates PI misalignment. Shorter, shorter, AS misalignment. So now we're able to identify we have a compound, actually a miscompound, PI-IN and an AS-EX over here. Next thing we look at is the sacrum itself. Are these sacral segments leveled? 5 level, 4 is kind of decent, 3, but 2 is tilted and an open wedge on the left hand side. And then 1 a little tilted accordingly, following suit. We also take a look, how is the sacral segments over here? We have an old damaged fourth sacral segment over here. And then we also have an open gap at the second sacral segment over here. So now we're able to identify we have a potential sacral segment issue we need to confirm on the patient. And we have one of these iliums also we need to confirm on the patient. By doing gait analysis, Gillet standing test, and the seated pelvic examination, we're able to identify and confirm second sacral segment. That's what we need to address first. It was adjusted, and the patient said, wow, doc, now I'm getting relief for about 2 to 3 days. But now here's the gotcha. As we're steadily adjusting this fellow over here, it's gonna tilt the sacrum a little more forward. Now eventually it gets to neutral position. Now if we keep on adjusting this even more and more and more, over time, now it's gonna go past neutral position and go forward. Then we start to have a different problem. And this is where we want to educate and inform the patient before we start adjusting the sacrum, because now we have a better understanding of biomechanics. I'm gonna let the patient know, it says, because you have a partial fixation that I was able to identify over here, but this was more acute and more fixated on the second sacral segment, I'm gonna let you know, eventually when this gets adjusted and becomes more stable, I would not be surprised this right ilium becomes more systematic. You may experience SI joint pain over here, or some kind of discomfort over here, or possibly some old injury you kind of forgot many years ago that's going to start showing up again. So when this day finally does happen, it tilts more forward, and this thing does become symptomatic, we don't want to get into a position where it says, so whoa, what's going on, doc? You know, I'm having this a lot of pain over here. I can't even walk right, can't jog right. What the heck did you do there, doc? Okay, but because we you know, set them up and we told them, says, hey, I'm expecting this fellow to show up sometime in the future. When that day does happen, they says, oh yeah, the doc let me know about that. Ah, yeah, he's onto it, right? So now here's the thing, okay? Now we need to identify, okay, which one do we really need to adjust, right? Do we want to adjust this as a PI-IN or PI or IN separately? Why? Because here's the thing. I don't want to take 2 steps forward and 2 steps backwards. Most of the time when we do a compound ilium adjustment, preferably it should be a PIEX or an ASIN. But because we have alternate, you know, the iliums over here, a PIIN, here's the thing. By adjusting this as an IN, all right, it's going to drop the femoral acetabular line even lower. Make the sacral base angle tilt even more forward. But if I adjust the PI and only the PI, it's going to raise the femoral acetabular line closer to neutral position and bring the sacral base angle from anterior to more closer to neutral position. So that's why we need to do a much more thorough, careful analysis during the gait analysis and delay and seated motion palpation. We're able to identify, says, wow, you know what, that IN, it seems to be fine. It's moving fine, not much fixation, not much tenderness, okay? But the PI, we're able to find some, oh, you know what, there's some more swelling and increased edema on the very superior portion of that fellow over there. It's more fixated versus to prior. This used to be fixated, but now this is slightly, and now it's become far more fixated. And we would identify, no, that's the fellow we really need to adjust, okay? So we adjusted only that fellow over there, and now the patient is able to report, whoa, hey, I'm jogging much more easier, you know, much more easier to walk, and the adjustment, it's holding now like 4 to 5 days. But here's the thing, after quite some times, you know what, it never gets beyond 4 to 5 days. Now we need to consider the next step over here, okay? Now, I was able to measure the femoral acetabular line over here. We have a 12 millimeter drop, the measured difference. AD is about 8 millimeters. Now, here's the thing though, okay? According to the chapters over here, okay, do we want to put a heel lift in there? Now, Dr. Gonstead mentioned this, okay? That starting at 7 millimeters and upwards, the body has a little trouble adapting to it. Now, do we want to automatically put a heel lift? Well, here's the important thing it states in the chapters. We only want to put a heel lift only when the adjustment itself is not holding, meaning this spine is not stable enough, all right? However, if the spine is stable, we do not want to put a heel lift in there, even though there's an 8 millimeter AD. I've been able to, and upon my experience, I've been able to, you know, have adjustments hold, you know, 8 millimeters, 12 millimeters, and my record so far is 17 millimeter AD. It still holds just fine for weeks or months without any heel lift whatsoever. So again, we want to make that determination, is the adjustments holding? And on this particular case, it's not. So now the next component is, do we want to identify, is this an actual candidate, all right? There's 2 known things where it's contraindicated to put a heel lift. If the spinuses were turned all to the right and we put a heel lift on that side, when we start raising it up on the heel lift over there, it's gonna make all the spinuses even more rotated towards the right. So that would make the patient not so happy. Another component is we wanna look at is, where is all the spines, okay, where is it leaning towards? If the spine was leaning towards the left, and we put a heel lift over here, it's gonna raise and tilt the spine even more to the left. And again, the patient's not gonna like that. In this case over here, we see all the spinuses already towards the left, which is good. We also see the lumbars and the spine leaning towards the right. So therefore, when we put the heel lift in there, it's going to take the rotation out of the lumbars a bit, okay? And also it's going to level up the spine even more. So we got 2 green lights. That's what we want to do. Next component is, do we want to put the full amount 8 millimeters AD? Now, if this was a typical office worker or a sedentary patient, okay, I usually put the full amount. However, now this is where I'm going to deviate a bit from the chapters. What I found is that if we are dealing with an athlete or a runner or so on and so forth, right? I usually don't put the full amount. I usually start off with half amount. And the reason why is because, keep in mind, the pelvis over here, right? This is not a stone statue. Every time we're walking, right, it's tilted and moving in this direction like this, all right? The body is trying to readapt to this short leg on the right-hand side over here. So now what we want to identify is this, okay? How do we know what's a sweet spot, all right? If we start off at 4 millimeters, well, this instrument over here is going to let you know. So we want to mark and identify, let's say for example, you know, we find says, okay, it's 15 points, right? Before we put the heel lift in there. After we put the 4 millimeters in there, we start notating, okay, you know, what's the response, okay? You notice any changes, say? And then we also take a look at the scope reading itself. It may drop down to 14 or 13. So, okay, all right. Then we may need to put one more layer in there, okay? Put up to 5 millimeters. Then we see it says, okay, it's dropping down to 13 or 12 points or what have you. And have the patient walk around, start to see more stable. Following visits, we see how the patient's jogging or working out. Then we put another one, okay? So that we're able to identify, so okay, we put 6 millimeters. After a while, then it's able to drop down to about roughly, let's say 5 points, all right? Then it says, okay, next visit, then we want to see, fine tune a little more. Let's try to put one more layer in there, 7 millimeters, okay? Then we start to have, even though the instrument shows like, okay, it's like 2 points or 3 points, all right? Significantly reduced. But now the patient says, whoa, hey doc, what's going on over here? I'm starting to get shin splints over here, okay? And now I'm starting to have even more pain on that right SI joint again. You know, what's going on over here? Now, here's the thing. Because the pelvis over here is dynamic, all right? And the femoral acetabular line over here, every time the person is jogging or walking, it's moving like this, okay? Just to keep it, you know, keep you guys simple over here in a one-dimensional plane, right? It's swinging like this, all right? So when we put the heel lift a little too high, it may tilt it way too high like this way. So that's why the patient may be experiencing more jammed up at that sacroiliac joint over there. So therefore, we need to drop it down 6 meters. We want to identify that's a sweet spot for that patient. And now, patient is reporting and says, oh wow, doc, now I start to hold about a week or more. Okay, so there we go. That's the sweet spot over there. That's the magic. We leave it alone from there. Okay. And then we go to the next step, which is if you want, start doing some muscle rehab or refer to a physical therapist, so on and so forth. So that's what the story is for this case over here. I hope you enjoyed it. So, okay. If you do, please go ahead, like and share this video. You got any more further questions, guys? Go ahead, leave a comment below. All right, I'll answer it. Till then, see you guys in the future. You guys take it easy.